Osteo Donegon. Welcome. You are here and that is good. I would like you to join me on a journey to the Emerald Isle, Ireland. But Ireland before St. Patrick chased the snakes into the sea, before Finn McCoo and the Finian warrior poets protected the Irish shore, to a time when Ireland was the Emerald Isle and magic existed, and the population was made up of fairies and elves and trolls. Now fairies are fair of face and form. They're about the size of a finch or a dragonfly. They move from plant to plant, pollinating. And all fairy maidens are princesses. Elves are about the size of man, but with pointy ears and sparkling eyes. Elves' bones are made of gypsum, which makes them light, to where they can climb to the top of the tallest trees without breaking a limb, and they can run through the forest as fast as a deer. They eat fruit and nuts and berries and tubers. They have powers of magic that help them heal the animals, make things better. Now, trolls are big like rocks. As a matter of fact, many a sleeping troll has been mistaken as a boulder. They can start a fire by flicking their fingers. They walk through the woods to clear out the deadwood and the underbrush. They walk through the rivers and the streams to keep them clear and running free. They eat fish and fowl and flesh and fruit. And as I said, they can start a fire by clicking their fingers. This is a story of Princess Miriscalia, the fairy Princess Miriscalia, and her friends, who was flying through the woods when they came upon a clearing where they saw a troll sitting by a fire with tears in his eyes. "Oh my," said the fairy princess, "that troll looks so sad. I wonder if there's anything we can do to help." "No, no," cried her friends. "Trolls crush fairies in the fairy dust and use it to flavor their stew." And they flew off back into the woods, entreating her to follow. Well, the princess started to follow, but she looked over at the troll and she saw a big tear rolling down his cheek, and her heart went out to him. And so she flew over to the troll and said, "Poor troll, is there anything I can do to help?" Well, the troll looked up and seeing the fairy princess said, "Why, yes, there is." And he reached out and grabbed her and crushed her into fairy dust and sprinkled her on the stew pot sitting on the fire. "What was that?" asked the second troll, coming out of the woods with an armload of wood for the fire. "Just another fairy princess volunteering to flavor our stew." "Good," said the troll. "Have you finished crushing the onions?" Now, while all this was going on, a clan of elves were up in the trees picking walnuts. And they saw what happened to the fairy princess, and they got together with their cherished grandmothers, and they realized they had all the necessary crystals and powders necessary, and so they made a plan. And they climbed down the trees and encountered the trolls and said, "Trolls, we have all these walnuts, but it takes us so long to break them all and separate the meat from the shell. Would you mind helping us? You can crack the shells and we'll share half the meats with you." Well, the trolls love walnuts, but walnuts eating the shells makes them sick, and their hands were too big to separate the meats from the shell, so they happily agreed. And while they were sitting down with the elves, crushing the nuts and separating the meats, the cherished grandmothers strolled over to the stew pot and scraped the fairy dust off the stew pot and took it off into the woods. They laid out their crystals and they called for the power of the fire and the water and the air, and they used their magic and brought the fairy princess back to life. "Oh, thank you," said the fairy princess. "I don't know what happened." The cherished grandmothers of the elves said, "In the future, remember, if you're going to open your heart, be sure to keep your eyes open as well." The fairy princess says, oh yes, I'll remember that. I need to go back to my friends and tell them." The grandmother stopped her for a second and said, "Just remember, they may be your friends, but true friends don't abandon you when there's danger about." And the princess, basically ignoring her, flew off back into the woods to find her friends. Later that night, the elves were sitting around the fire eating the walnuts and laughing because they knew in fairy language, mira means to look, and scalia is a name for onions. So Mira Scalia's name means look for onions. Thank you. Wakto. Now you might be wondering why a person in Native American dress would be telling a story of ancient Ireland. The reason is, in the years between 3,000, actually between 5,000 and 7,000 years ago, there were people who were living in the the northwestern end of the Atlantic Ocean, what we now call Newfoundland and New England, who are known as the red paint people or the maritime archaics. And they had large skin boats like umiaks that the Eskimos and the Inuits have that could hold as many as 70 people, a whole clan. In the spring, as the ice floes came down from the western coast of Greenland and moved into the area of Newfoundland and New England and caught the Gulf currents and turned north to go across the Atlantic, these maritime archaic people, their umiaks out to the icebergs and then level off a portion of the iceberg, turn their umiaks over and use it as shelter and ride their icebergs across the Atlantic to Ireland and Scotland and Norway. And that's why the Irish also have a skin boat called the Curath that's very much like the Inuit and the Eskimo umiak. And the Scots and the Irish were clanspeople just as the Native Americans were clanspeople. Now once they got to Norway and they finished trading their carved tusks from the walrus and the narwhal's tooth, the unicorn horns, they would take their umiaks, head north, and on the east coast of Greenland catch a iceberg going back down the east coast and taking them right back home past Iceland and right back home to Newfoundland and Ireland and New England. That's why the tales of the Irish and the tales of the Native Americans often sound very much alike. Thank you. Wakto.